So let's go ahead and get started here. So when you check out Canvas, you'll see that we have the notes page. Again, you want to be going over Module 1 all this week and next week. If you look at the syllabus, it'll guide you of what modules you should be working on. So it's modules 1 and 2 for the first test. Okay, modules 3 and 4 will come next, and then you have 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 8 total modules. To be successful, you want to look at the notes page. You want to come to class. And if you have the digital version of the book, you'll be granted access to these exercises and videos that will also help you study for the exam. You can buy the book, which is right here. If you want to check it out, you can always take pictures, before or after class. Maybe if you want to check it out, let me know. In the first couple of weeks, we go over health and wellness, understanding wellness. We're going to talk about that today. We have a couple of videos that we'll watch. We'll watch a video. We'll talk about the video, what we learned. We'll perform some movement, and then we'll come back here and perform the same thing, a video, and then we'll talk about the video, okay? I also have videos of me teaching the PowerPoints, so I don't want to be repetitive. In some classes, I will be repetitive, and we will go over things twice if I think it's necessary, or if I think we need to talk about things some more. Like some new terminology like force and form closure might be new to your vocabulary, so we might talk more in depth about those types of things. But when it comes to health and wellness and some of the functional anatomy, you may already know some of this stuff. So this first couple weeks might be a review. So again, I have the PowerPoint, 2 PowerPoints, and then there'll be a video with both of those PowerPoints. I have these next 3 PowerPoints all in one video. Okay, so I've already created the lectures for this class just in case we were to have to go online. That way I am prepared. And also, if we don't get to things in class, I know hopefully if you want to be successful and if you want to pass the test and certification after this class, you will be looking at the notes. So your grade will be pretty easy to see how much you've been studying based off being in class and being prepared. So when it comes to understanding wellness, we'll go ahead and watch this quick video, and then we'll, yes, go ahead.
So we bought a physical copy, do we not have access to it?
That's a question. If you want this version, I think you have to choose. I do think you have to choose. If you want to call them, they're really good about picking up the phone at NCSF if you ever have a question. They're probably the best resource to ask that specific question, but I believe you have to choose. Okay? Any other questions about the book or the modules? I'm not sure if we went over unexcused absences, but you do get 2 this semester. And if you have an excuse, obviously you won't get any points or anything taken off of class. So if you don't feel like coming to class, you do have 2 unexcused absences that you get. Third class, you'll start losing 5% of overall grade, and then fourth class, 10%, and then anything over 4 without excuses, you'll have to fail the class. PAR-Qs, we talked about that in the mass policy. An active and professionalism rubric. This is something that we haven't talked about, so we'll talk about today. We have a little scale here: unacceptable, needs improvement, acceptable, and excellent. For active participation, student is on time, rarely late, and proactive with excuses. What does that mean? That if you're not here, or you're going to miss class, or you miss assignments, then you're proactive, you're reaching out to me. I'm not reaching out to you, say, hey, you missed this assignment, or hey, you were late, or hey, you're not coming to class, like what's going on? Obviously you don't have to tell me like what's going on if it's an unexcused absences, but if it is an excused absence and you don't want to get credit taken away, just let me know. I don't want to have to come after you and ask you all these questions and try to keep up with you during the semester. So ask questions or makes comments in class, that's part of active participation. Uses technology, phone, computer for the purpose of learning only. Is enthusiastic or stays positive during class. You don't have to be super enthusiastic, but I do ask that you try to stay positive. Communicates and actively engages with teachers and peers. Professionalism, wears appropriate clothes like athletic shirts, athletic shoes, gym shorts, and pants, because we are going to be performing movement, so I want you to feel comfortable. Appropriate conduct and language around teachers and peers. So as much as we might get to know each other during the semester, at no point should we be talking anything inappropriate, jargon talk, like kind of locker room talk. I don't want to have that type of communication with my students. I don't think that's very professional, and I don't want you to think that it's okay to, describe things that are inappropriate in class out in the open. Engages in safe and fair practices during the semester. That you're not trying to injure anyone with equipment. Obviously, you're sticking to your own space when we're moving around. Able to lead by example without hesitation or having to be prompted. Okay, so if I do ask, if we are doing movements or if we're doing things, I don't have to ask you twice. That you're kind of self-led in this class if I give you a workout to follow. All right, so that's the active participation and professionalism rubric. This class is pretty straightforward because it is a certification course. I don't want to go too far in the deep end and talk about all this stuff that's not going to be on the test and not prepare you for something that you want to be prepared for. So that's why the final and the tests make up 50% of your grade, because that's basically what you need to do is pass the course, and it's all multiple choice answers. Assignments, there are 4 assignments that are related to the NCSF lab manual. So if you get the lab manual, you'll see that I'm taking the assignments out of the lab manual and putting them into our class so that we are doing those labs. And then as far as professional and active participation, we just went over that. All right, so let's go ahead and go over health and wellness, or understanding wellness, according to NCSF.
Learning goals for this lesson include being able to recognize the 6 categories.
All right, so for these learning goals, I want you to try to write down these learning goals and try to know these things, because these are obviously going to be things that will probably be on the test.
Of wellness, understanding the factors that affect health and wellness, defining and differentiating between physical activity and exercise, defining key exercise principles such as overload, progression, and specificity, understanding the difference between an elastic and plastic response, and differentiating between moderate and vigorous activity levels.
All right. Does anybody know what elastic and plastic responses are to activity? Or take a guess? Elastic and plastic. What would be a plastic response to exercise? What do you think that means? Fake? Yeah. Fake? So it's a fake response to exercise? Okay. Any other? So it's a very real, well, we could think of it as the opposite of fake, because the plastic change occurs after many inputs. So in elastic response, it would be an input. Let's just say foam rolling elicits a very temporary relief or range of motion effect. And then over time, we're hoping that we get that range of motion, which would be a plastic response. Okay, so elastic is basically saying that we're getting an input that's making a small change. A plastic response is when we actually adapt anatomically into what we're trying to do. All right, so these will come back up in the video if you haven't gotten it all.
First off, let's make sure we understand the concepts of health and wellness and how they have evolved over time. The traditional understanding of health simply looked at an individual's susceptibility to disease. Individuals with no diagnostic criteria for disease or known health problems were perceived as healthy, while those with disease or chronic health problems were seen as unhealthy.
So disease or not disease is health. Okay, so that's a good way to remember what health is. Do you have a disease or do you not? You can't tell someone's health by looking at them, right? You might be able to say, well, I think they're fit, but I don't know if they're healthy. Two way different things, right? We think we're healthy because we're fit, but we might have high blood pressure and high cholesterol because we eat garbage, right? And we might make it look like we're healthy, but inside we might not be. If you're a smoker, you can't see people's lungs, right? And we know that's a detriment to health.
We know health and wellness is not as simple as this. Today, the concept of health has evolved to also consider an individual's overall well-being, also called wellness.
So wellness is widely considered in our whole entire school, obviously, College of Health and Human Services. Wellness, you'll see the components also where on campus do you see them in the air? Where do you see banners of wellness? At the rec center. So when you go to the rec center, you'll see the components of wellness on the walls.
This suggests people be viewed holistically rather than via independent physiological measures, such as just blood pressure or weight. An evolved concept of wellness includes various health-related elements, including physical health, mental health, emotional health, intellectual health, social health, and environmental health.
All right, what do you think an example of physical health would be? Let me call on some people here. David? Harrison? What do you think? Exercising, yep. Carly? Carly B. Walking would be physical health. All right, what about mental health? Carly F. Journaling, yep. Gratitude journaling is probably one of the most researched ways to improve mental health is writing about what you're grateful for and then reading that over each day as as a means to increase your positivity levels. Danielle Harris for mental health. Engaging in activities you enjoy, like hobbies, participating. Yeah, novelties, things that you like. What about something that's emotional health? Zach? Zach's not here. Maddie?
No, I'm here.
Oh, sorry.
Emotional health? You can reflect on your day, on stuff you like about it.
Yep.
Thankful for.
Okay. Maddie? So that could be doing things that you like to do also. Okay, emotional health? Yeah. Okay. Any other? Zoe? Just like talking to people. Yep. Yeah. Having friends, right, is really going to improve your emotional health. What about intellectual health, Chris?
I guess like doing like puzzles and whatnot, keep your brain like up to.
Yeah, any type of learning for the brain. Like what we're doing right now would be intellectual health, right? And getting that information. Information is knowledge. Knowledge, you've heard, is power sometimes. Colin, what about social health?
Hanging out with friends.
Hanging out with friends, okay. Eugene, social health. What's do you think what really improves your social health the most? And how do you like to connect? What's that? Work. Okay.
I was gonna say, like building friendships through stuff like that you're like passionate about.
Okay.
Like, for example, I like to fish, so like I got to know everyone down at the pier because I don't know the boat.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like.
It's finding your circle, finding a circle. Maybe you have a circle right now. And then what about environment health, Emma? Yep, yeah, not just littering, right, and stuff like that. Jamie, anything for environmental health? Okay. Carter, what about, let's go back to mental health. Meditation, oh, yep, that's another great thing for mental health, right? Focusing on your breathing through your nose as opposed through your mouth is really important. Why do we want to breathe through our nose and not our mouth? What does our nose do that our mouth can't do? filters the air. What else does it do? It moistens the air. What else does it do? It heats the air. Okay, so it has to do, or depending on the air, it might have to heat or cool it, right? So it has to do a lot of different things. The nasal passage is a very complex system, and its job is to breathe, but it also releases nitric oxide, which is what? Laughing gas. It makes you feel good. You don't get that effect when you breathe through your mouth. And breathing through the nose also stimulates a lot of different, not sympathetic, but parasympathetic outcomes where you're able to rest a little bit better.
The key concept here is that health may be best understood as both the physical and mental state of a person and the assortment of lifestyle behaviors that affect either state, rather than just freedom from disease. A healthy lifestyle reflects a group of actions and/or behaviors that positively affect one's overall well-being, suggesting that wellness is the culmination of healthy behaviors. A person who lives a healthy lifestyle avoids stress and negative health behaviors, eats nutritionally appropriate foods, enjoys positive relationships, and engages in routine physical activity. Now, reflecting the opposite side of the equation with unhealthy behaviors presented here on the left, we see that major repercussions are possible when poor daily habits turn into long-term negative routines. Physical inactivity, lack of sleep, chronic stress, a poor diet, smoking, drinking alcohol, and being overweight lead to all of the most common health disorders and diseases, such as hypertension or high blood pressure, diabetes, depression, systemic inflammation, stroke, heart attacks, and even cancer. Physical inactivity is aptly presented at the top of the list, as regular activity and exercise is a primary contributor to a healthy lifestyle. Among adults and older adults, physical activity can lower the risk for early death, coronary heart disease and stroke, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, breast and colon cancer, falls, and depression.
So as a personal trainer, that's your selling point. You know, that is why we're doing what we're doing, right? It can change all of these different risks.
Among children and adolescents, physical activity can improve bone health, cardiorespiratory fitness, muscular fitness, body composition if overweight, and social development and confidence. Unfortunately, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, about 80% of adults do not meet the guidelines for aerobic.
So that's a pretty important number. 80% of adults don't meet guidelines for aerobic and strength activity. So most people aren't physically healthy, basically.
And strength activities, and greater than 80% of adolescents do not perform enough aerobic activity. To underscore its importance in a very clear fashion, lack of physical activity has been identified as the fourth leading risk factor for global mortality.
25% of all deaths are due to lack of physical activity. 1 in 4 in the entire world.
Or early death. Let's now progress by making sure we understand the tangible difference between physical activity and exercise. Physical activity can be any purposeful and repeated bodily movement produced by voluntary skeletal muscle actions that increases metabolism.
Purposeful and repeated movement produced by voluntary skeletal muscle actions that increase metabolism.
Examples include gardening, walking the dog, or cleaning the house. Exercise, on the other hand, includes planned, structured, and repetitive bodily movements performed to improve or maintain one or more components of physical fitness.
So exercise is planned and structured, right? Exercise is different from physical activity. Physical activity can change day to day. Exercise, as we know as personal trainers, when we set a program up, we don't change things for 3 to 4 weeks because we can't change the human body without repetition and structure and adaptation and progressive overload. If we do something random every day with our clients, we can't assess that later and see any results.
Examples here include weightlifting, taking an aerobics class, or running 5 miles. The key concept to grasp here is that exercise can qualify as physical activity, but physical activity may not be exercise. It is all based on relative intensity. An activity may function as exercise for one person, but not another. For example, an older person may walk around the block and physiologically perceive this as exercise, while for a college student in their early 20s, this may just be physical activity. Essentially, true exercise must produce a stress that stimulates cellular responses and generates the potential for new or sustained adaptations. Now that we...
So I'll go back to that because that's a good point. And this framework that we're building as a trainer, and I know a lot of you are writing these notes down. These are basically what set us up to be better personal trainers, knowing these little things first.
Now that we can recognize the difference between physical activity and exercise, let's take a look at key exercise principles. All exercise professionals must understand and be able to properly apply the principles of overload, progression, and specificity.
Probably the three most important principles in training. Yeah, if you want to take a picture of the screen, you can also do that.
The principle of overload dictates that stress must be applied beyond that which the body is accustomed to promote adaptations.
So what does that mean? It means adding 1 rep each week to your set. It's adding 2.5 pounds to the bench each week that you press it. Say you have a phase 1 program where your client is doing a dumbbell bench press, and they start with 25 pounds, and you have 27.5 pounds that they can do next week, and then maybe they can do 30 the next week, or maybe they stay at 27.5 one week, or maybe you can progress it by adding a band. So there's just different ways that you can overload.
This means some sort of new training stimuli must be applied for continuous adaptations to occur. Putting the same weight on the bar and jogging at the same speed every day on the treadmill will not result in stellar changes to the body.
Yeah, the person that runs that same jog every day at the same pace, or maybe just 10 or 15 seconds more, they're not going to get any overload from that.
The principle of progression dictates that once the body has adapted to a level of stress, additional stress is needed to promote further adaptations.
So what would be a progression of a bilateral squat, a goblet squat? If I'm squatting like this, what would be a progression of a goblet squat? What would be the next thing I could do? What's that? Front squat. That would be a little bit harder because I have to get the bar up. Yep, it's gonna be a little bit different. What's that? Landmine squat. Maybe a split. Maybe transferring more weight on the front leg and going to a split squat, or taking the weight off that leg and going to a one leg squat. Okay. And then maybe my phases will go front squat, split squat, and then one leg squat. And if I can't do a one leg squat, maybe I'm just increasing the load. Maybe I'm starting with a goblet, and then I'm increasing load by putting 2 weights in my hands like that, if I don't want to go to that one leg squat.
Progressive overload is practically combined in structured exercise programs for ongoing adaptations. And finally, the principle of specificity dictates that a desired adaptation occurs in response to specific stresses placed upon the body.
So if I'm trying to get a stronger upper body, I need to do more pulls and pushes. If I want a stronger lower body, I need to do more squat and hinge patterning, right? So it's just all relevant whenever you train.
Therefore, exercises and activities must be intelligently chosen and matched to reflect the fitness goals of the client. These principles tie in with the concepts of elastic and plastic responses to exercise. An elastic response presents acutely to an unaccustomed level of stress, but the body's system reverts back to the starting condition once the stimulus of stress is removed. For example, if a person walks 1 mile, they will experience acute increases in their heart rate and metabolism, but no lasting adaptations. Now, a plastic response occurs with repeated stress, which causes system improvements due to adequate recurring exposure. This allows chronic adaptations and changes to occur. For example, if a person walks 1 mile 4 to 5 times a week for 8 weeks, they may experience a mild reduction in their resting heart rate and improvements in their aerobic capacity. Exercise professionals need to apply the exercise principles in a way that allows elastic responses to build upon each other for positive plastic changes. Let's finalize our lesson by examining physical activity guidelines, as well as how to quantify intensity levels when choosing given activities. Current guidelines for baseline health benefits recommend 150 minutes of moderate intensity activity per week, or 75 minutes of vigorous activity per week, or an equivalent mix of the two intensities at doses of at least 10 minutes at a time each day, combined with muscle strengthening work 2 times per week.
Okay, and this is what you can tell your clients. They're like, well, how much activity? What should I be doing? What's the recommended? This is the recommended amount. Okay, 150 minutes per week or 75 minutes of vigorous, and you can do that 2 ways. You can mix the 2 intensities, or you can do it all at once. And then you have muscle strengthening, which is 2 times per week, which is the minimal effective dose.
All work performed should burn at least 1,000 calories. For greater health and fitness benefits, the duration of physical activity for all 3 choices is simply doubled, while the strengthening requirements remain the same. But now all combined work should burn at least 2,000 calories per week. Here we have
So let's go.
The duration performed should burn at least 1,000 calories.
So you should burn about 1,000 calories per week. Okay, and if you're and then what they say next is what you should do if you want to increase would be go to 2,000.
For greater health and fitness benefits, the duration of physical activity for all 3 choices is simply doubled, while the strengthening requirements remain the same. But now all combined work should burn at least 2,000 calories per week. Here we have some prime examples of moderate and vigorous activities. Guidelines define moderate activities as those which are performed at 3 to 5.9 times the intensity of rest. These values are calculated via oxygen use or other factors that will be addressed in a later lesson.
And we'll go ahead and look at those again. So this is at about 3.5 to 5.
Guidelines define moderate activities as those which are performed at 3 to 5.9 times the intensity of rest. These values are calculated via oxygen use or other factors that will be addressed in a later lesson. Guidelines define vigorous activities as those which are performed at 6 or more times the intensity of rest. This concludes the lesson on health and physical fitness.
All right. Now let's go ahead and see if we can answer some questions here. The contemporary understanding of health examines susceptibility for disease as well as individuals overall. Now you can't look at your notes for this. What is the answer? What do y'all think? See? For baseline health benefits, an individual should burn at least how many calories? Not 2,000? Good job. Minimum physical activity guidelines for general health benefits. A blank response occurs when repeated stress which causes chronic symptom. C or E or B? What do you think? Identify what are the 6 components? Physical, mental, emotional, intellectual. So, and what? I'm not going to spell that. Common contributors to poor health. Okay, tobacco use. I won't write all of them in, but what else do you remember? Alcohol, tobacco. Those are probably 2 of the inadequate sleep. Okay, what about common health disorders and diseases? Hypertension, diabetes, cancer. Okay, and estimated to be the 4th leading cause of death. What is? Inactivity, physical inactivity. Defined as planned, structured, and repetitive bodily movements. Exercise. True or false? An elastic response occurs when the body changes slightly, accommodating an activity related to stress. What do you think? You think that's true? Okay, we'll see. 50% of adults do not meet the guidelines for aerobic strength and activities. Is that true or false? Yeah, that's true. All physical activity is considered exercise for the body. False. Yep. What's that? True. About 50% of adults do not meet the guidelines for aerobic strength and activities. What do y'all think? True or false? For an activity to be defined as exercise, must produce stress that generates the potential for new or sustained adaptations. What do you think? You think it's true? All right. At least 3 diseases. All right, we'll just go ahead and see what we got. Check it out. Wellness, y'all were right about that. 1,000, 150 minutes per day. Plastic response, correct. We got all the components. These are the different disorders. Physical inactivity, exercise. See, 9 was true. 10 was false, correct. 11 was false, good. And then, yes, true for 12 as well. All right, so that was a little bit on understanding wellness. We're going to go perform a little bit of movement now. So go ahead and stand up, and we'll go ahead and move over to the lab. And we'll come back here for video in a little bit. All right. All right, so find your own space on the floor. Just spread out. So typically, if we had some foam rollers, that would probably be the first thing I would teach. But for some reason, they don't have foam rollers in this room. So try to find more space. Doesn't have to be a circle. Try to find just your own space so you really find as much space as you can. So there's more space in the middle. So move to the middle. Try to utilize the space. Okay. So yeah. So move in a position that gives you the most space. I'm gonna probably stand right over here. All right. So find a position. Get some space. All right. Go ahead and let's go ahead and sit down. So if we had foam rollers, I would probably talk about foam rolling a bit and go over that, but once we have foam rollers, there's some way to do some self-myofascial release, we'll do that. What that basically is stimulating the Golgi tendon organ, which sends a response to the nervous system saying to relax. So when you push into muscle, when you get a massage, or when you get foam roller action going on in all of your different major muscles, it stimulates elastic response, which is a temporary response that gives you a little bit more range of motion. It makes you feel a little bit better. And then you go on to your next activities. In NCSF, they want you to foam roll after your workout. There are teams on campus. I know the softball team, they foam roll, or the soccer team, they foam roll after practice as opposed to before practice. Some certifications will tell you to foam roll before, but I'm telling you that NCSF, they prescribe it after. So you need to know NCSF, but you also need to know that, like I said, different certifications will prescribe different things. So if you hear someone foam roll before a workout, I recommend that as well. But just know that different certifications have different protocols. Then after foam rolling, I get into my stretching. Okay, I think of my major joints. I think my ankle, I think my knee, my hips, my spine, my shoulders, right? So the first thing I might do is get into what we call a 90-90 position. What we're going to do is we're going to bring one leg in front of us, one leg behind us, and both of our knees are going to be at a 90-degree angle. And we want our hips also at a 90-degree angle. So if our knee is up like this, I want it to go straight out. Okay, and this is my femur right here. I want my femur parallel to my front tibia. Okay, I want my ankles both dorsiflexed. Okay, I'm going to face forward, and I'm going to use, if you need yoga blocks, if you feel like you're leaning like this and you can't stay up, go ahead and grab, I think we have some yoga blocks over there, and you'll place those yoga blocks in the ground and sit up nice and tall just like this. Okay, so go ahead and just hold that position, assume that position. I'm going to come around and check for anything. So we want this on the same line here. So that would go right here. Yep. And that foot would be on that same line right there. Okay. So this would come out a little bit more. See, we kind of want to make a box right here. So this would go right here. This would go right there, and then this would go right here. Oop, yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So yeah. And if your front knee is off the ground, that means that there might be a little stiffness in that front hip, so a little off the ground here, and that's okay. This is going to come out a little bit, and you can see how I'm adjusting people, because yeah, that front knee's coming off a little bit there. If that knee is coming off the ground, what I would ask the individual to do would be to put a pad under that to give it a little bit more. See, he might need that. Give it a little bit more tactile feedback, okay? Does anybody feel like they need the yoga blocks to be up a little bit taller? Now, it's okay to use them, okay? I would actually prefer everyone had these just in case. Now, from this position, what we're going to do, if you were using these, you would just go like this, help you stay up. You might have a client that's leaning like this. From here, we're going to lean forward. We're focusing on this front hip rotator, glutes and piriformis. We're going to take an inhale through our nose, and then we're going to pierce our lips and blow everything out through our mouth. And we're going to take 3 more inhales, 3 more exhales. Hands are wide, and we want a neutral spine as we hinge forward. And we're going to hold and breathe here. So you want to kick out your leg a little bit. Yep, a little bit more. Yep. And then you're trying to get the chest over this knee. Breathe and hold. And now we're going to go toward that back hip. Now we're going to focus on our hip internal rotators. So we're going to corkscrew our hands behind us. Again, if you want the yoga blocks, go grab them. It's going to be a lot easier to put your hands in the ground like this. Going to rotate back, focusing on hip internal rotation. If you start nodding up and you need to get out of this, go ahead. Go ahead, same thing, 4 inhales, 4 exhales. You're trying to inhale through your nose. You're trying to pull your knees apart into the ground. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. All right, now we're going to go ahead and windshield wiper the legs and go to the other side. And I want you to notice when we go to this other front side, if one hip is tighter than the other. Now again, front knee is right in front of the hip bone. Knees are at 90 degrees. So make sure our knees don't look like this. We want that foot in line with the knee in line with this front foot. We're making like a box right here, facing in front of this leg. We're going to hinge over that leg. You'll feel a stretch in that glute med, glute max, piriformis, and that front hip. You're going to inhale, straight back, look straight ahead. We don't want to go like this. We want to just hinge forward, inhale through the nose, pierce, exhale through the mouth. 3 more, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Now we're going to rotate our body. So, see, right for me, this is starting to cramp up. Anybody else starting to cramp up a little? Okay, and if you need to get out of that, like I said, just get out of it. If anything hurts, just get out of it and try to come back in it. We're going to bring our hands behind us. We're going to rotate toward that back leg. This shoulder is trying to go toward that foot. More advanced would be to go like this. Okay, so we're going to rotate, feel in this back hip, breathe and hold. Again, inhale through the nose. Look at that back foot. Pierce the lips on your exhale. Long exhale, trying to get all the air out. When you inhale, inhale 360. Big exhale. Good. All right, let's just go to a more simple stretch, your typical butterfly. Now, I do like the butterfly stretch against the wall, so if you feel like you can't stay up here, go ahead and place yourself against this wall right here, and it's going to help you a little bit, okay? You can just rest your back against the wall. If you feel like you can't get if your knees are all the way up here, it means we definitely need to work on getting a little bit more flexibility in those hip adductors, okay? So your hip adductors, what are the muscles in your hip adductors? What would the muscles be called in our hip adductors? Anybody know any of the anatomy? So that the iliopsoas is part of the psoas, which helps the hip flex. The adductors, we have the adductor longus, brevis, and magnus. We have the sartorius that goes from our hip across our knee, so that will also be stretched a little. We have our gracilis, which is our innermost muscle, okay? So that would be the adductor complex. The what are the adductors responsible for? Starts with an S. S-T-A-B. Stability. So your adductors and your glute med and your quadratus lumborum and transverse abdominis all stabilize our muscles. So your adductors are going to help with stability on one leg. And they'll also help with just controlling your leg when you walk. So we're going to go ahead and push the elbows into the thighs to get more of a stretch. We're going to try to hinge forward or sit up nice and tall. And we're going to inhale through our nose. Big exhale through our mouth. Inhale through our nose. And exhale through our mouth. Good. All right. So go ahead and grab a pad or a yoga block if you need one. We're going to do some half kneeling stuff. And if you have sensitive knees, you might need a yoga block or a pad, okay? You can also just use a yoga mat. I want you to learn how to do stuff using the mats and the tools, just in case that your client needs one of these. Because a lot of times you'll get them in a half kneeling position, and you honestly don't know how much pressure you're putting on that back knee. So that's why I like to give people a pad or a block. Now, if you feel like this ground is good enough, or even better than this, then just use the ground. But I do want to give you as many options as possible. So for half kneeling, what I'm going to do is, half kneeling is probably one of the hardest positions to teach because we like to open up our hip and get into a very comfortable position when we get into half kneeling. Okay, so when you see someone half kneel, it might look like this. You got an externally rotated hip and an externally rotated hip, right? That's what happens. We want almost internal rotation of both hips so that our hips are almost going straight ahead. Think about finding a line almost and getting your feet on that same line. And then maybe stepping that front foot just slightly to the right of that line. Okay? We want our back toe tucked when we're in half kneeling. Why? Because big toe mobility is really important. So anytime we can get big toe mobility, so tuck that back toe. So that's called dorsiflexion of that ankle. We're always looking to gain dorsiflexion of the ankle, and we're always looking to try to stretch this hip flexor, especially on this left side. We'll talk more about why the left side is more important than the right side. We want to make sure that the foot is in front or right under the knee. We don't want to be bent like this. So bring that right foot forward. Yep. and we want our hips straight. Now just getting into this position, if we lean forward, you'll feel a stretch in this back hip flexor. Okay, and then you can kind of hold onto that front knee, hinge forward. We're going to do 5 rocks. We're going to take an exhale when we go forward. So we're going to take an inhale at the top, and then inhale, inhale. All right, let's go ahead and switch side. Okay, know what side is your right and left. Try to get your hips forward. Try not to let the hips go like this. Find a line if you need to. Find a line and maybe put your left foot just on the outside edge or your right foot. Make sure that you're at about a 90-degree angle with the knees. Hold on to that front knee. We're going to stretch out that back hip flexor on our exhale. So we're rocking forward. Good. All right. So what side was tighter? What hip flexor? Raise your hand. You can sit any way you want. Raise your hand if your right hip flexor was tighter than your left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whose left hip flexor was tighter than the right? Okay, most of us. Okay. PRI would say that's because and is because your left psoas major is bigger than your right. And that's because your diaphragm is bigger on your right, and so your left diaphragm is a little bit smaller. And so that actually changes the position of your internal structures, which makes one of the reasons why your psoas is bigger and stronger on your left. It may be more tighter. Okay. Now we're going to work a little bit of ankle mobility. So you're going to find a wall or a pillar, something stable, and I'm going to demonstrate first. So for ankle mobility, what I'm going to do is I'm going to find a wall. I'm going to place my foot about 8 inches from the wall. I'm going to put all my weight on that front foot. I'm going to push my hands into the wall, and as I do this, I'm going to bring the knee over the midfoot. I should feel a little bit of a stretch in my calf. Now putting all the weight, like I said, on that front foot. Don't press into any pain. If you feel like there's pain in the knee or ankle, you don't have to do this. You want to keep your ankle and heel down. So keep your front heel down. And go for about 5 rocks. So heel down, heel down. I see a lot of people that front heel off the ground. Again, so you're going to your start position and then go to your end position, knee over the toe. And then go ahead and switch side. And try to keep that front heel down. Get a little bit closer. Remember, the foot should be about 8 inches away from the wall. And again, trying to keep that front heel down. Good. All right, let's go back to your spots. I'm not sure what NCSF calls this next one, but I do know that they do have this on their exercise list. But we're going to go into Spider-Man next. But basically what we're going to do is we want to see if the client has hip strength and mobility. And one way you can do that is starting in the push-up position and asking the person to, I don't want you to do this yet, and if you don't think you can do it, don't try to do anything you don't think you can do. If you want to go one step at a time, I'll tell you how to do it one step at a time. So one step at a time would just go like this. Okay, going from scratch, we'll go from the push-up position and slowly stepping and then bringing the knee down. From here, rocking out to the outside. Feeling the back hip flexor again. You may feel a little bit in the groin here. And then back to the push-up. Switch, just like that. If you want to go step by step like this, that's fine. So go ahead and try that. If it's too much, make sure the back knee is down. Back knee should be down. Okay, and we don't want the front knee. So you have that front knee over the ankle. We want to make sure that front knee stays right over top. Again, I still want my dorsiflex back ankle. And then go ahead and switch if you haven't already. Okay, back knee down. And obviously there's a lot of variations. I just saw Eugene, he did something like this with the back leg off the ground. But this is a little bit more specific just to the back hip flexor. So obviously you can get into different positions and add rotations and stuff like that. I'm very wary when it comes to rotating specific portions of the spine. And you have to understand how to move different portions of the spine without affecting maybe one or more other portions of the body, okay? So this one is called a quadruped T-spine rotation, and we're trying to block the lumbar spine out. We don't need to train the lumbar spine in rotation as much as we think we do. We think that like Russian twists, now we're doing plank twists, we're doing stuff like this, we're doing stuff like this, we're doing stuff like this. Now, if I were to ask you, let's do those same stretches on your neck, what would you say? No, I'm not going to do it. Why? Because we don't need to train rotation of the neck, do we? Does anyone train rotation of the neck? Same reason why we don't train rotation of the lumbar. Rotationally speaking, and degrees-wise, anatomically, we're not supposed to be rotating our lumbar as much as we can because the same reason why we can't rotate our neck all the way. We're not exorcists. We can't. We'll physically be incapable of moving if we do that. Same thing with the lumbar spine. Lumbar spine needs stability, anti-rotation, anti-flexion, anti-extension exercises like planks, side planks, one-arm carries, Palloff press. Your T-spine, that's the area, the chest, is what needs rotation. So we're going to block the lumbar spine and rotate the T-spine with the quadruped T-spine rotation. So we're going to get to the hands and knees position. We're going to collapse down. If you can't collapse down, then you can stay like this. But if you can, this is the reason. The only reason why we're doing this is so that we're blocking out the lumbar spine. From here, I'm going to demonstrate, then you can perform. I'm going to put one hand on the armpit or right under the armpit, or right on the top of the ribs. I'm going to look at the ceiling as I rotate. I don't want to lean. Watch this. A lot of us are going to lean in fake rotation. All I want you to do is rotate with the eyes. Hold, inhale. As you exhale, try to rotate more. Inhale, hold. Exhale, go further. And try to do that for 4 inhales, 4 exhales. So hold on. We want our chest opening up here. So hold on. So right elbow like this. So we want elbow like this. Other way.
Oh, other way.
Yep. Oh. For you, yeah, for you. And then go ahead and switch side. If your butt isn't touching your heels, you might be using a little of your lumbar. Just try to breathe into that, both sides. Good. All right. So that would be for more of the rotation of the T-spine and how to block that off. Another way you can do that is just crossing your legs. Hands across. And we're going to rotate all the way. Back to center. Rotate. Hold. Back to center. So that would be some other ways to rotate just the T-spine, because the lumbar is locked in those areas. Okay. Pec stretch. So go ahead and find any barrier. We're going to do what we call a wall pec stretch. So elbows at like a 90-degree angle, palms into the wall or barrier, and we're just going to get the front delt, pec major, pec minor. Okay. So try to get your elbow, if you can, into the wall just like that. That looks good. Yep. The best place to do it is a barrier, or like, that's why they call it the doorway stretch, because you can go into a barrier like that. Your opposite foot forward, other leg would go back. If I'm using the wall, yeah, it's going to look like that. Bring the elbow down right there. Maybe a little higher. Right there. That looks good. Breathe into that. 3 inhales, 3 exhales, and then switch side. So pec major, pec minor, front deltoid. Okay. After that, let's just do a lat stretch. Lat stretch you can do 2 ways. One way you can do the lat stretch is using a barrier like this, or just straight up a wall. So go ahead and go straight up a wall. Feel that stretch in your lat. You should feel it in your chest maybe a little bit as well. These are 2 good stretches to do before you're preparing for your upper days, or I incorporate upper into all my days, so same with lower. So I might do this each day. All right, let's go back to your space. All right, shoulder controlled articular rotations, just shoulder cars. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to irradiate, which means that we're going to squeeze all of our muscles. And then we're going to just try to control one arm without moving. We're going to try not to laterally bend, not to extend the spine. Don't rotate the neck. The only thing that moves is your glenohumeral. So we're going to go into flexion. Thumb goes back. We're going to rotate so yep. I'm going to reach all the way back. Keep rotating. And then the back of the hand will be next to the body. One more. Now we're going to reach back. Try not to bend the wrist. Rotate externally. External rotation. Deflection. Shoulder. What is this called? Abduction or adduction? ADD or ABD? What do you think? Shoulder what? What is this called? Shoulder horizontal adduction. So when you're bench pressing, shoulder adduction. Shoulder horizontal adduction. That's one of the questions they always ask you. When you're bench pressing, what is the joint action of the shoulder? Adduction. Okay? Adduction with the hips, abduction. Okay? Let's go at the other shoulder. Thumb goes back. Again, trying not to use your low spine. Reach all the way back, rotate. So the pinky is forward when we complete our rotation. Thumb is back. Reach back. Try not to move the spine. Rotate externally. Thumb goes back. Horizontal adduction. Good. Okay. Wrists. We're going to make 90-degree elbow bend. Extend the wrist. A quick wrist check is to go like this. You should be able to make a flat 180-degree angle here. Okay, if our wrists are like this, when we do a front squat, when we catch a clean, when we do a push-up, when we're putting pressure on where pressure we don't own, or we don't actually have that range of motion. So we're actually either compensating or we're going into range that we don't actually have. So we might have to think, oh, how do I get more wrist mobility? Or what exercises maybe are causing this. So one thing we can do for wrists is just some rotation. So we're going to start an extension. The reason why I'm going over the rotations is because I'm going over functional anatomy as well. I'm telling you about the muscles and all the different movement explanations. So we got extension. When the pinky goes toward the midline, what is that called? What's that? So wrist, it is adduction, but it's specifically called something else. It's a deviation. Does anybody know what I'm looking for? Ulnar. So we have our ulna right here. Go ahead and touch the ulna. When we're in the anatomical position, the ulna is on the inside, I'm getting it wrong. It's the radius, right? Sorry. The ulna is on the outside because the tibia is on the, I'm getting it all mixed up now. No, this is ulnar deviation, and you have radial deviation. Am I right about that? I might have to check myself now. But you have, I'm going to have to really check myself. We might have to Google that right now. Let me look real quick. So I'm not messing y'all up. I don't want to be starting off like that. I know what it is. I shouldn't even have to look. All right. So ulnar deviation. You have your radial nerve, which is your radial pulse. That's what I'm forgetting. Okay, so your thumb has your radial pulse. So whenever you're looking for your radial pulse, that's what you're looking for. Your ulnar is on the inside, so you have ulnar deviation and you have radial deviation. Okay, and then you have wrist flexion and wrist extension. So we're going to put that all in one. So we're going to go in, flexion, out, and down. But try to keep your wrists in front of your elbows, and try not to use your elbows. Try to only use your wrists. So it's going to look like this, nice and slow. So flexion, fingers all the way up. Yep, out, down, in, up, out, and down. Okay, relax. So for the elbow, you have flexion, you have pronation, and extension. Supination, flexion, pronation, extension. Okay? Shoulders, you have flexion, abduction, extension, internal rotation, external rotation, internal rotation. Yeah, we'll do a little shoulder. So let's make a field goal post. So we have external rotation here, internal rotation of the shoulder. Okay? External rotation, internal rotation. Okay? Hip. Okay? Find a barrier. We're going to perform a hip car. So you have hip flexion, you have hip abduction, internal rotation to extension, and then you have extension, abduction, external rotation to flexion. Okay? So go ahead and try that. So go ahead and hold on to a wall. Watch out for the blocks. So right hand, let's put our right hand into the wall so we can all practice the same leg. Flex the left hip. Keep the ankle dorsiflexed. Abduct the hip. Internally rotate. Extend. Keep the knee bent. Now we're going to abduct. Externally rotate to flexion and down. Go ahead and switch side. Push the left hand into the wall. Hip flexion. Abduction. Internal rotation to extension. Try not to lean forward. From here, extension, abduction, external rotation, and down. Good. All right. Let's go back to your spots. All right. Next one will just be a squat. So we'll just get into squat position. So First thing you can do is, if we don't own the squat, is we can just kind of hang out up here. You can hang out right here. We can get into a supported squat by sitting down on a med ball, or we can just come down right here. So if you want to get a med ball and sit on a med ball, if you feel like you can't get down here, then from here you can bring the hands together, kind of stretch out the groin here, hands on the ground, hips up, stand up. Okay? We're going to reach for the feet. Feet are about shoulder width, slightly out. Come down, hands together. Now we're going to do overhead, overhead, and then up. Now if that was too much, don't worry about the overhead. We'll do it one more time. We'll come down, touch the toes, squat. One arm up. If this is too much on the knees on the way up, just come up like this. Okay? 1, 2, and then up. Okay? Now for that overhead squat, that's one of the assessments we take our clients through when we first meet them. Can they overhead squat without going like this on the way down? Can they keep extension of the spine? Do they have the ankle mobility, or their heels go off the ground? Or can they sit in those hips? Okay, those will be things that you look at. You might see the knees cave in on the way down. We don't want that. That means we need to work on our hip meads. We need to strengthen our VMOs. Okay, or vastus medius, they call those. Those will all be things that we'll be looking at. We even have the TRX map, so we'll probably do that this year and see what we're at on that machine. See, are you leaning into the right hip? Are you leaning into the left hip? Okay. All right, let's go back to our seats, watch our video, and then we'll head out. Grab some water if you need it. All right, so we'll get into the remaining minutes of class with this video.
Let's begin by identifying the various components of fitness. The tangible components of physical fitness are generally split into two categories. The health-related components of fitness, including cardiorespiratory fitness, muscular strength and endurance, flexibility, and body composition. These factors impact general health and affect risk for disease or injury. And the performance-related components of fitness, including power, speed, coordination, balance, and flexibility.
And these are all on the PowerPoint, so you won't be missing anything when it comes to if you weren't able to write these particular terms down.
And body composition. These factors impact general health and affect risk for disease or injury.
And these are all things we can assess. We look at cardiorespiratory fitness, we look at VO2 max, we look at resting heart rate, muscular endurance, how many push-ups can you do, how many sit-ups can you do, muscular strength, how much can you do, flexibility, what's your range of motion, what's your squat pattern look like, what's your lunge pattern look like, can you reach your hands? Go ahead and try this one. Can you reach your hands behind your back and touch your fingers? If there is more than 4 or 5 inches there, then we really shouldn't be asking the client, and go ahead and try your other side. Now, if there's a lot of space in between, we shouldn't be asking our client to go do things like overhead pressing or back squatting, right? Because we know that they don't have that range of motion, just if they fail that test. Now, what are we doing to our clients if they have bad shoulders? We're putting them at risk, is what we're doing. So that's why it's important to screen before. And then body composition, you can look at BMI. That's one of the easiest things you can do. And then obviously you can look at body fat composition.
And the performance-related components of fitness, including power, speed, coordination, balance, and agility. These are factors that impact performance outcomes and being able to remain independent among older adults. Many are surprised that the performance-related components of fitness are very important for older adults as well. But one must consider that numerous activities of daily living incorporate elements of strength, balance, coordination, and power. For example, getting up out of a chair unaided requires notable hip power, and carrying groceries up the stairs to one's apartment requires strength, balance, and coordination. Performance is needed across the lifespan. Before reviewing each health and performance related component of fitness, let's make sure we understand the actual difference between being healthy or fit. Health is defined as a disease-free state of well-being that allows for improved quality of life and independence. Health maintenance simply requires routine physical activity of suitable frequency and duration. Fitness, on the other hand, relates to criterion-based measures of physical performance. Fitness requires a regimented program designed to emphasize specific physical abilities. The key concept here is that a person does not have to be fit to be healthy, nor is a person guaranteed health because they are fit. They are two separate things. A person who scores well in the health-related components of fitness, but are stressed and suffer from high blood pressure, may not necessarily be healthy, while a person who scores well in the performance-related components of fitness, but is obese and has a low aerobic capacity, may be fit in some ways, but not healthy. Let's now segue into covering each health-related component of fitness,